All right, steps three. Actually, I'm going to describe 3 and 4 together because they must rise kind of at the same pace. Now, we talked about direct primary care being the foundation, being robust. Direct specialty care, which is really a category of everything after that, everything direct secondary care, you could call it as well. But we're talking about things like imaging. We're talking about mostly anything non-emergent in that category. Cardiac, heart surgeries, oncology care, cancer treatments, orthopedic surgeries, general surgeries, everything else, all the specialties, endocrinology, etc. This is a category that, and there are many passionate doctors out there as well, and there are many free market surgery centers across the country, but they're much more vulnerable. They rely on referrals, so they can get walk-ins. The Surgery Center of Oklahoma is the pioneer of this, been around the longest. They're actually getting a fair number of patients and have for decades from Canada. Imagine that. So the government is kind of like a monopoly too. So if they don't perform, they don't have anyone to compete with. Why would Canadians pay 60% of their taxes and then still spend more and pay out of pocket for cash to come to America? Well, there's reasons for that I'm not going to get into, but they're doing it in large numbers. And so specialty care is unique in that that's where actually most of the money, so 80 to 90% of the care is primary care, but maybe 10 to 20% of the cost, where the reciprocal in specialty care, 10 to 20% of the care, but maybe 80 to 90%, something like that, of the cost. So if employers don't do this, they're not going to control their costs. Now, the big house brokers may have even recommended DPC. You may think, well, mine's different or something. Well, are they getting a kickback from DPC? I would check that first because they really shouldn't be. They shouldn't be getting kickbacks on all the people they recommend. They should just be paid by the employers. That's who they're supposed to be working for. Um, but one of the interesting things is DPC doesn't affect really even hospitals. DPC alone, I'm not sure they really care that much. It's their referral. So as long as they don't lose their referrals, which they have controlled through the networks, so the DPC doc for specialty care still has to refer back to the hospital if we don't have alternative direct specialty care. Direct being defined as without insurance, really. Direct paid by the self-and funded employer plan, which covers half of Americans, or walk-ins with cash and so forth. Um, so direct specialty care is growing pretty fast as well, but is really dependent on that foundation of DPC. So that has to grow. So that completes out, minus a few gaps of maybe ER and so forth. Maybe the hospitals that choose not to compete or are unable to compete become emergency centers, or maybe they become very high-level inpatient centers or something. Or maybe they compete for everything, but that could be something in the future, and that'd be fine. Again, we still want the free market dynamics of knowing the price and reasonable prices. The fourth step, or the one that goes alongside the third step, is the buyers. I was a buyer for almost 25 years, and ironically, the buyers are fast asleep in this game. I think they're starting to wake up when you get a 20 or 30% increase every year, and your deductible's 10 grand, and you have basically unusable insurance. You're paying a big part of your check for it just in case the catastrophic happens. That's why health shares are taking off so fast. How many of Americans know about health shares? Maybe 10%. I know 78.2% of stats are made up on the spot, so I don't know what the actual, right? But we need 90% of people, of Americans, to know at least how health shares work and have considered them as options. They're probably cheaper and better than their employer health plan in some cases. But we need the buyers to get in the game, and we need the buyers' health plans freed up. If you've tried to start a health plan, you realize the number one challenge is how do you pay hospitals? Because the hospitals say, well, what kind of numbers do you have if you're starting a new health plan? Well, nothing. I'm starting a new health plan. Or what about an employer? Well, yeah, we have 300 people. I'm sorry, we work in volume, so we won't do a direct contract with you. So you have no way to shop with those hospitals outside the network. And the networks, the biggest networks, there are some independent ones, but the biggest networks, the ones that start with a B, a U, a C, or an A, don't let you shop for value. Doesn't sound very free market, right? We have a monopoly. We're going to put it in the contract, which you should check if you're forced to go with them, I guess, for now, right? But just stop feeding the beast. Stop patronizing bad things, or poor partners, or untrustworthy partners, as I call them in my book. But we need steps 3 and 4. We need the buyers to get in the game, and we need the specialty care physicians to get in the game at about the same pace. If there's too many buyers and not enough sellers, especially in the specialty care, we have an issue, right? It doesn't sustain, or if we have too many sellers, the physicians jump in the game, and the HR folks and the CFOs and the CEOs of companies who have health plans don't change their health plans to shop for value and reduce those premium increases because they're actually paying what they should for healthcare. They're paying $500 for an MRI instead of $5,000. They're paying $17,000 for a hip replacement or joint replacement instead of 100 plus or what, right? It varies greatly. And they're buying bundles, they're buying clear things instead of all these separate codes and all these things. We don't buy a car. When we buy a car, we don't say how much are the tie rods and the bearings and the wheels and the tires. We say how much is the car. And not everything can be bundled, but certainly that's ideal when possible. So that's the third and the fourth step. And once those kick in, then we have a free market again. We have healthy alternatives, right? I'm sitting on my pontoon boat today, which I bought a few years ago. If I'm going to buy a pontoon and I have to buy in network at this one store, and the salesperson knows that, and I say, wow, that's like 20 grand too much for this boat, and I can't walk away, I'm stuck. We need alternatives. I go to a different store and say, compete for my business. And that's what a free market looks like. So once we have that, the natural laws, the natural economic laws start to kick in, and then we don't have to rely on human nature, which I'm not really hanging my hat on. There are lots of good folks out there, and there are lots of corrupt folks out there, especially in the healthcare world. Sorry, that's just sorry, but not sorry. That's just true. So I'm not counting on them trying to change their ways or be more benevolent, or the monopoly winner at the end of the game to change his or her ways. I'm counting on free market dynamics, but first we have to put that free market in play. So thanks for your time, folks, and hope you can join us in this. We believe this is not only the best way, but the only way that we're actually going to solve this. And hope you had a great 4th again, and may God bless American medical freedom as well. Have a great day.